Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Trust you had a great weekend. Political reflections, a stunning picture. Hong Kongers, your beautiful no extradition to China. The numbers were overwhelming, as you can see from this photograph, Apple Daily Hong Kong. My article over the weekend used the quote by Hugh Masekela, "I want to be there when the people turn it around." There are decades when nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen, said Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. The zeitgeist of a time is its defining spirit or its mood. Capturing the zeitgeist of the now is not an easy thing, because we are living in a dizzyingly fluid moment. Charles Onyango Obo, Kobo 3, tweeted, "Police tear gas Malawi protests against Mutharika's election theft, aka the TIPEC solution. In Liberia, demos against corruption, where shutters the internet. In Sudan, the military slaughter 100 in continuing pro-democracy protests weeks after Bashir fell. In Algeria, Bouteflika ousted by protesters. What's up?" I asked, indeed, what's up? Let's start in Khartoum. The zeitgeist of the revolution was as intoxicating as the oud that the Saudi Arabian ambassador once gave me, and I found myself semi-delirious, intoxicated on my own perfume. The exquisite murals, the composition of the crowds, the element of girl power which spoke to hope and a future. As I watched events unfold, it felt like Sudan was a portal into a whole new, another normal. David Pilling in the Financial Times captured the essence by quoting William Wordsworth, who wrote of the French Revolution, "Oh, pleasant exercise of hope and joy, for mighty were the auxiliaries which then stood upon our side. We who were strong in love, bliss was it in that dawn to be alive. But to be young was very heaven. Not in utopia, subterranean fields, or some secreted island heaven knows where, but in the very world which is the world of all of us, the place where in the end we find our happiness or not at all." And then Darfur came to Khartoum, he concluded, or was it Tiananmen or Tahrir Square? And now we have two visions of the future. One vision played out on our screens. The protesters could have been our wives, our children, our daughters and sons. The other vision is that of MBS, MBZ, and Al-Sisi, and it's red in tooth and claw. Vladimir and Xi back the Gulf, and America is below the radar. Hugh Masekela said, "I want to be there when the people start to turn it around." Sudan is a Masekela pivot moment. Down south, the rand crossed 15 levels, which was seen only previously in extremis, like when President Zuma conjured up Desvan Ruyen as his finance minister. Essentially, the rand was ace Magashule. Magashule spooked the markets with his televised declaration that the ANC had decided to broaden the mandate of the Reserve Bank and told the government to implement quantitative easing. He referred to it as quality easing. Max Duprice wrote as follows in the online Afrikaans weekly Vera Weekblad. ANC factions are waging war in public. The economy retracted sharply in the first quarter. Populists in the ruling party are flirting with radical economic concepts such as quantitative easing and are determined to undermine the status of the Reserve Bank. It seems there is an increase in violent crime and farm attacks. The rand is close to 15. It went over on Friday. It's back below again. Eskom, Transnet and SAA are close to collapse. The ANC is in open rebellion, except, as Thabo learned, the president serves at the pleasure of the ANC and not the other way around. I don't see how this gets finessed. In fact, the direction of travel is for the fissure to get wider. Add into the mix a very soft Q1 and a China-South Africa feedback loop, which is undergoing a trend reversal, and we have some ingredients in play pointing to a further slide in the rand. I would be selling rebounds and out-of-the-money call options and buying puts with the premium received. Zimbabwe has finally dialed up Madame Lagarde, but here too Mnangagwa is not only in the habit of hitching rides on MBZ's planes, I'm sure well-appointed planes, but also leans to MBZ's vision of the future. Let's turn our gaze to Zambia, where President Lungu is seeking to nationalize Mr. Agarwal's copper mines, and the strategy seems to be to flip it and probably clip the transaction for some juicy brokerage. The problem with this strategy is that the price of copper is down 11.4% since mid-April, and there is simply nothing left of FX reserves. Bond yields are in default territory. This is a Hail Mary pass, I'm afraid, and Lungu's cashew nut moment. What happened to the cashew nut crop in Tanzania? What I missed entirely, however, was the big spike in Snapchat, up 155% year to date, that was in brackets. African rare earth producers. Having spoken about it on my show on Metropole TV at least 2 weeks ago, when I said this might prove a hallelujah moment, a geopolitical renaissance for President Pierre Nkurunziza, because there are rare earths in Burundi. Reuters reported that the Pentagon has held talks with both companies following threats by Beijing to cut off supply to the country. Rainbow Rare Earths is developing a project in Burundi, said it could neither confirm nor deny the news. Makango, which wants to build a mine and processing plant in Malawi, did not immediately respond to a request to comment. Rainbow Rare Earths traded up 38%, Makango up 42%. Rare earths are a group of 17 niche minerals that are used in electronics, electric cars, and some military equipment such as night vision goggles and lasers. And therefore, it is a quandary, isn't it? It is better to act than to say, as it were. That took me to T.S. Eliot's The Hollow Men, Mr. Kurtz, he dead, a penny for the old guy. Between the idea and the reality, between the motion and the act, falls the shadow. I missed that Snapchat rally, but obviously it's evidenced in this image. Which social media platforms do teenagers prefer in 2019? And Snapchat is way ahead. The scale of this no extradition to China protest is comparable to the umbrella revolution of the July 1st protest back in 2003. What will come of it is another matter entirely. Putin, over the weekend, the dollar, once the global reserve currency, has been turned into an instrument to pressure the whole world, he said. Americans are shooting themselves in the foot. And I did a long interview with Sputnik at one point, and they took all my comments, and let me just tell you what I said to them. I said, Trump, who remains a linguistic warfare specialist, has proven a skilled coercive sanction warfare specialist. The dollar is a weapon, and he's relishing his financial warfare strategies. And essentially his coercive foreign economic policy is the signature success of his administration. It is highly effective. Look at Venezuela, look at Mexico to see its most extreme output. Iran is in a similar bind. China is in retreat, notwithstanding some bravura talk. Trump can keep it up. It's working a treat. And for the foreseeable future, I do not see gold, the Chinese renminbi, or crypto replacing the dollar. It's not going to happen in our lifetimes. I like this in Medium. One of Trump's signature moves as president is to act as both arsonist and firefighter, taking credit for resolving pseudo-crises that, in fact, he initiated. Quite correct as well. Saying it's an appropriate reductio ad absurdum of his credit by gaslighting style of governance. I take you back to October 2018 when there was an incident with the USS Decatur and a Chinese warship which came within 45 yards of it, and we see a similar near collision between US and Russian warships near the Philippine Sea. I came across this tweet from Kennedy M. Mari to President Magufuli, and I think he's entirely accurate. Very in-depth article in New York Books, Reckless in Riyadh. Excellent exposition of the Saudi-American relationship going back to 1945, the USS Quincy, when the Saudi king brought live sheep for roasting on deck and his astrologer, and the American president introduced the 70-year-old king to ice cream and movies. The Pax Americana, the fact it suited both of them. Bruce Riedel, an advisor to on the Middle East to four presidents, has noted that the sole instance of an American leader pressing the Saudis for internal change occurred in 1962, when at the urging of John F. Kennedy, then Crown Prince Faisal reformed the judiciary, introduced free healthcare and education, and abolished slavery. Saying the White House has long directly overseen the US-Saudi relationship, but saying this long-running accommodation may be crumbling as a result of the rise to power of the impetuous Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Carter Doctrine, it would be difficult to overstate Saudi reliance on the US security guarantee despite the country's slow push to remove US forces from the kingdom following the terrorist attack on a US Air Force barracks near Dhahran Air Base in 1996. As the scholar Will McCants remarked, when it comes to Islamic extremism, the Saudis are both the arsonists and the firefighters. Interesting, isn't that? Unlike many princes of his generation and even the preceding one, MBS has been schooled entirely in Saudi Arabia. Appointed Minister of Defense in January 2015, made second in line to the throne. Thomas Friedman, much to his embarrassment, got completely sold on it. Well, so did many others. And basically talking about the Iranian issue, the fact that they're pumping money into the Sudanese military to help it put down the demonstrations that toppled Omar al-Bashir. The Yemen campaign, which essentially has not worked and has failed, and saying that he is at risk because he's moved against his own princes. He's at risk from those guys as well. Well worth reading this article. It's lengthy and in full. I wrote about it on 8th of April. I said the petrodollar economy was symbolically born on February the 14th, 1945, when King Abdulaziz Ibn Saud of Saudi Arabia met with President Franklin D. Roosevelt aboard the USS Quincy in Great Bitter Lake. And that in 21st century geopolitics, the petrodollar is the granddaddy of all geopolitical red lines. I quoted Brzezinski, who said the three grand imperatives of imperial geostrategy are to prevent collusion, maintain security dependence among the vassals, keep the tributaries pliant and protected, and keep the barbarians from coming together. The oil economy is a very big deal. If you look at the amount of derivatives traded, the cash market, the fact that more than 85 million barrels are sprouting up into the air every day, and a huge rustle of money comes down. It's one of the biggest cash spigots around. And that threats by any nation to undermine the petrodollar are viewed by Washington as tantamount to a declaration of war against the USA. Of course, MBS is the alleged owner of Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi, which is a painting of Christ as Salvator Mundi, the Savior of the world, dated to circa 1500. And then I've written about Saudi Arabia before. In November 2017, I was saying that, he launched this war in the Yemen. It's not winnable in my view. And that the degree of paranoia in his head is expressed by this comment: how can I communicate with them while they prepare for the arrival of Al-Mahdi al-Montazar? And I said, in all the history books I've read, it's probably wisest to operate on one front, not two, and certainly not three. The depth of field, the spooky symmetry of Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. You know that photograph with her in the window of Buckingham Palace? It was spooky, wasn't it? This is the best description of why it was so spooky. Symmetry disquiets. This week, nothing brought that notion to light more starkly than the image of Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner standing uniformly framed in a window at Buckingham Palace. Captured by Samir Hussein, the inanimate, spooky tone of the photograph evokes an immediate emotional reaction. There's a strange emptiness to it all, and yet the picture is rich in metaphorical dimension. Its composition carries a dark tenor, reflective of present and lurking evils. What is it trying to tell us? Ivanka and Jared emerge from a darkness the image promises they might retreat to it once this long political nightmare is over. And this is the point: similarity shared with the horror staples of The Omen and Flowers in the Attic.